A good day today. Hot Topic Tuesday. It is November 29th. We are basically 4 weeks away from the end of the year. So hopefully you're still at it in knowing that what we're doing today is really our income, the first quarter of 2023. So this is a time period where we got to make sure that we're not taking a break. But yes, continue our learning opportunities, continue focusing on our business, and really building our lead base for 2023. So today's hot topic, as you can tell right across here, that's hard to do. Anyway, buy-sell agreement failures. And this came about because I was talking with one of the title partners that we've got, and it just simply came up to the aspect of, well, she brought up three things that they were running into more than anything else at the time of closing. Now, closing, if we'll remember, that's supposed to be the happy day. Everybody just comes in, they sign, one gives money, the other gets keys, and everybody leaves happy as happy can be. However, it was really interesting to hear this from our title partner. And then today we talked a little bit further, and she gave me a couple more things. So between us, this is what I want to share with you today. Now, first thing that you got to understand is the real issue comes up with the aspect of having clarity in regards to the purchase agreement. Now, our purchase agreement is written pretty well to where the clarity is there. There are some things that, and we're going to be working on that, and really hoping to, goal is have an update to you at the first of the year. But just know that if you write anything in, you got to have clarity. You got to ask, what if? So not just, let's say a simple one, subject to property appraising. What does that mean? Well, what if it doesn't appraise? So if you write anything in, the simplest thing that I can ever tell you is answer the question, what if? All right. But that's a thing. And I'm in Lapeer today. Thank you for hosting me. Talking with Renee, one of the things that she brought up is the same thing that I've told many, many people. You need to know that if ever there's an issue with a purchase agreement, the first thing that we're going to say is, bring me the paperwork. Because one word in a purchase agreement can change to where it makes thousands of dollars of difference. And it could be arrears versus advance. One word. So whenever you get a purchase agreement, we have to read through it thoroughly. And that's one of the big things that we can do to avoid any purchase agreement or buy-sell agreement failures, okay? So just remember that first key. Now, here were the three things. I want you to write these down. We'll take them one at a time. Issues at a closing or issues with a buy-sell agreement. And again, this came out because this is coming up at the closing. First one, believe it or not, is as simple as tax prorations. People don't understand what tax proration is, what it means, what a proration is. If you just took proration and said adjustments, that's what a proration is. We're adjusting to where basically each party is paying their fair share. So explain to them what prorations are because they don't understand. Now, excuse me, that's the first issue that we run into. Them understanding what prorations are, but in particular, tax prorations. Guess what the second thing is? Advance versus arrears. So when you receive a purchase agreement, you really have to go into that section. By the way, go through every section, but knowing this is one of the biggest things, and we're talking thousands of dollars in difference, It's the difference between how taxes are to be handled. Our purchase agreement says that they're treated as if paid in advance, unless if you note otherwise on the purchase agreement. So, matter of fact, let me do a screen share here and pull that purchase agreement up so that we can take a look. Now, again, this is how our purchase agreement addresses it. I want you to see the first part. All property taxes are due and payable on or before. Whoops, I just forgot about these guys and it just showed up for me. Not gonna work there. There we go. Sorry for all those just came in. I got a little distracted and forgot about you guys. So property taxes, all property taxes due and payable on or before the date of closing shall be paid by the sellers. Very clear statement. All taxes will be prorated and adjusted. Our purchase agreement actually kind of explains it. As to the date of closing, with the due date of the municipality or taxing unit in which the property is located. So with this part of it, it's addressing how or when they will be prorated. What's the due date? That's what that statement is about. It then says the proration of the taxes are viewed as paid in advance unless noted differently. Now, I want you to catch, that is not based upon the municipality. It would have to say differently on the purchase agreement. I hope that makes sense. So with our purchase agreement, they're treated as if paid in advance unless we stated on the purchase agreement somewhere differently. When is that an issue? Well, there's areas of Shiawassee County. I think Ingham is another one that I've heard about. Tuscola. And by the way, that is not, how do I put it? It's not the county. It could be as close as to the township and how the township is treating the taxes. Okay? But no, our purchase agreement does state and is very specific as to how we're going to handle those. All right? So first issue, tax prorations, help them understand. Two, make sure that they understand advance or in arrears. Remember who it benefits in advance, the seller. If it's in arrears, it's going to benefit the buyer. Now, think of that. Go from advance to arrears, and if it was $3,000 to the seller, you could basically have it now going $3,000 to the buyer, which it's not a $3,000 cost. There's a $6,000 window that could be. So when you do these purchase agreements, one, make sure you understand ours. Two, make sure that when we get one who's someone else's, that we fully go through it, because again, one word makes all the difference in the world. Yep.
So do you write that in the comments on the contract that this will be a change in the tax?
Well, actually, you don't need to do anything, but you might want to highlight in additional conditions. So the question I have here in Lapeer was that we've got Tuscola and you have kind of mixed is what I'm guessing, right? Because again, it goes down to the taxing authority, which is not the county, but onto the township or a village or city aspect. What you may want to do, even though the purchase agreement is clear that they are treated in advance, is in additional conditions, as per paragraph 13. The proration of taxes will be treated as if paid in advance. So it's already there, but we would want to address it again. Now, again, if you go to an area where it's customary, and I'll use the Lansing area, their purchase agreement is actually putting it as if it's paid in arrears. If they come into our area where it's customary for them to be paid or prorated as if paid in advance, you need to make sure that you understand that, because again, that's a much lower offer for a seller if it's in arrears. It's customary for our area to be in advance. Okay. Let me just take a look and see if I have any questions around that one in the chat. Give me just a moment here, gang. Good, I think we got that. Thank you. All right, so I don't see any questions from there. So I'm going to move on to the next topic. Next issue at a closing, believe it or not, appliances. Appliances. Here's what we have to do. The purchase agreement says, let's go to that part. Property described above shall include all gas, blah, 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 yada, 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 all those things that are permanently affixed or support equipment, basically. What does it say about appliances? You may actually want to write in those two lines, also to include, by the way, yes, you could, would, should use this, also to include the existing stove, refrigerator, washer, dryer. See, if all I did was to put on here the stove, refrigerator, washer, dryer, what are we telling the seller that they're responsible for doing? They are to supply a stove, refrigerator, washer, dryer. It didn't say that it's the ones that were there. So that becomes an issue. Oh, by the way, to go as per listing ticket or whatever you want to refer to that as does not suffice. That's not going to be good enough. Because, well, here, how often we're turning back into a what we'll call a normal market. How often in this market do we actually pay what the price is that they're marketing it at? So what people are saying is that, well, the appliances were on the listing ticket. Well, yeah, but the price was also 300,000 and I sold it to you for 290. You want to pay the 300? Because I'll give you the appliances. Right? It's what the purchase agreement specifically says. So again, also to include the existing. Now, let me throw one other little tidbit for you here. What if there's 3 refrigerators in the house? You might want to put the brand name, the location with the brand name. Be specific. And many of you have heard me talk about this when you reviewed our videos regarding the purchase agreement. When in doubt, write it out. You're not sure that it's included, but you know that a buyer wants it included. Spell it out. Put it on the purchase agreement. Be specific with that. That's an important one.
I just attended a deal that has the washing machine on the contract, but on the personal property sheet, it's excluded.
Those wonderful personal property sheets.
They said that the contract should override the personal property sheet, but it's right on excluded.
Okay, so let's talk personal property sheets. I didn't have that written down, Jack. I might upset some managers. Let me give you my thought on personal property sheets. Don't use them.
Well,
But let me explain. See, I was prepared already. Let me explain what I mean by that. The where these came out of is basically Genesee County, because what everybody wants to do is to have the $20,000 tractor included in a sale. Okay, so I'm going back a ways. This is years, probably even a couple decades. Well, and you've heard this story. You submit the offer, it's accepted. The lender goes, you can't have that on the purchase agreement. You need to remove that and put it on an addendum. Now, I want you to think about that. I wish you were here and you could really see visually what, matter of fact, let me try to do this. You submit a purchase agreement that has a $20,000 tractor agreed between buyer and seller to include in the sale. The mortgage person says, okay, write an addendum and remove that. Okay. Does the mortgage person want that addendum? Yes. So now there's a purchase agreement and addendum removing that tractor. And then they say, but just write another addendum, but I don't want to see that one. So here's what they did. Here's your purchase agreement addendum that's removed it. Here's the one that's added it back in, but we'll just hide this one under the table so that nobody else knows about it. They get to the closing and they sign a document that says all things were closed in accordance with the purchase agreement. There's no other agreements that are part of this. And there's a loan. And I'm just going to put it, it's a loan. They borrowed money. We'll keep it simple. Federally backed. What did you just have the seller and the buyer do? You've committed fraud. Okay. Now that's where all of that comes from. So if you, so my guidance is this, and managers deal with this however you're going to do with it in your office, having that basic understanding. There's nothing wrong with a personal property sheet as long as it's addressed on the purchase agreement. As an addendum, it should say, see attached addendum regarding personal property. Or the personal property sheet is hereby made part of this agreement. Now, everybody knows, and we're not hiding anything. But what I would not do is put anything else on the purchase agreement. Or everything that's on the personal property sheet, make sure that it's on the purchase agreement. If it's there, and I do it the same way, if that's what we want, don't do the personal property sheet. Because what Jack brought up here, guys, is there's the purchase agreement saying one thing and a personal property sheet that's saying something different. Which one is going to, what one is going to rule? My guess would be the personal property sheet, because they were signed and executed at the same time. It became an addendum to changing the purchase agreement. If it was signed prior to, then the purchase agreement would probably rule. But understanding that, that's where you'll know how to be able to handle that. And again, your managers will guide you with that, but you may not have ever had that discussion before. By the way, I'm going to give her the microphone, so I'll step away. So
I called Bernie on this one time, and on our PA where you can attach different things, because a personal property sheet, according to him, is not really an addendum.
right.
So you have to, on our PA where you can, the FHA addendum, whatever, you can write in another addendum, and it needs to say personal property sheet. And then on the personal property sheet, you can add whatever you want. It just needs to say at no additional value. So really, his addendum is not overriding his PA unless it states a personal property sheet addendum that was attached to his PA.
I hope all of that makes sense, and I would not disagree. By the way, when she says Bernie, we're talking about the individuals at the Mar Legal Hotline. So, yeah, we do have to take that, but I always say this, they're giving you something on the face value with what they're presented. Okay? Oh, by the way, yeah, he's free. The MAR legal hotline is free. I'm always going to tell you, go see your broker manager first, but quite often we're going to call them and get their thoughts and opinions on that. But again, remember, they're giving you things based upon the face value with what they're actually presented. Okay? So good discussion. We're going to leave that one for brokers and managers. The big key is just address it. Don't hide anything under the table. And oh, by the way, mortgage people and real estate agents in Genesee County will tell you we've been doing this forever. Wait, you've been committing mortgage fraud forever. I don't know how else to put it. If you're doing what they tell you to do to the T, yeah, it's mortgage fraud. Okay, so that was appliances and took us into another one. Here's the next one that she brought up. Concessions. How can concessions become an issue at closing? Because we didn't tell anybody. And then your seller, yeah, see, it was good. Great face. So what do you mean we didn't tell anybody? Well, you said that, well, by the way, and they're going to ask for 3% back. And that gets applied toward the closing cost tax, prepaids, any other allowable expense. Because it's really the lender who's going to determine what is acceptable and what they will allow that to be put toward. So when you look at the concessions and they say it's because we haven't told them, we didn't clarify, we didn't help them understand. So then all of a sudden on their $300,000 offer that they accepted, they see on their closing statement $9,000 that's being given to the buyer. Now they understand. So the best thing I could tell you is you want to help people really understand, don't breeze past concessions. Make sure that they fully and completely understand what's going on. All right. We're going to leave that one as simple as that, because there's a few others that I want to make sure that we get to in the time period that we have left over. Earnest money deposits. I understand, I do it myself, the aspect of being able to get the earnest money deposit upon acceptance. I'm going to leave it in brevity that way, but just use the clause that we provide to you. I understand that, I use that, but here's the big key, make sure that you get it. Let me tell you what to avoid is delaying it all the way until you have a satisfactory inspection. And for me, by the way, this doesn't matter if it's the buyer or the seller. And we could have some really great discussions on this. Because if I'm representing the buyer, there might be really good reasons why we would want to collect it after we've removed the contingency. But I can tell you recently in Rochester, we almost lost a $600,000 deal because it came in on our listing that way. In short, this is what happens. The buyer's agent never collected it. Then the buyer walked. For reasons that really, I'm giving you the brevity to this. We weren't going to get anything. And we almost lost the listing because of it. So thankfully, Brenda jumped in, Brenda Davis, my co-manager there, jumped in and talked with the seller, worked things out, explained all the different things, the reasons why. But why go through all of that? What I'm going to tell you is that to me, it's probably worth a counter offer in most offers to say, no, we want it no later than upon acceptance. I'll tell you the other reason. We've had agents who forgot to collect it because it's 15 days later when they finally get the full report and they're ready to remove it. Do you remember to collect it? That's an issue. Even to the point where somebody had to actually, I can think of two agents I know, they had to pay they had to pull out of their pocket because they forgot to collect. Ouch. Just remember. Let's see, that was number 4. Number 5 on my list, rent escrows. Rent escrows. I want you to keep these simple, but part of it getting to the point where it's a joyful, happy day is because how much am I going to get? What's the payment I'm going to have to do for this post-closing occupancy? Because a common thing to do is 1/30th of the PITI. When do we find out what 1/30th of the PITI is? Probably the day before closing, if not the day of closing. Now we're getting back to the point where we can negotiate again. So we probably are charging a fee. It could be 1/30th, but look, keep it simple. What's fair market rent? Charge it. What's approximately 1/30th of the TI? Calculate it out. There's all kinds of tools to be able to do that. I can do it in about 20 seconds. And I'll have an idea of what the PITI is, as long as I'm abreast of what's going on with the market, the interest rates. I'll have the taxes in front of me. We can get a solid idea. Add $5. You're going to cover whatever the difference, the error might be. It's nominal if you're going to actually collect anything, but it's another one of those, and it's a timing issue more than it is anything else. Again, when I get to the point of a closing, that's supposed to be the happy, joyful time period. I don't want issues last minute, and especially at the closing. Here's number 6. You guys are going to love this one, and this will just start a debate, which is the reason I've done it last. And oddly enough, Valerie, who's part of my Rochester office, actually brought this up right before we started talking. She said, you know what, we've had little discussions about this, but maybe it would be a great hot topic Tuesday discussion. What is it? Damage deposits. Ouch. Damage deposits. So here's the reason this would be a really long, lengthy discussion. Some of you like these. Many of us don't, probably most. Let me tell you why. It's an unbelievable number that when you have a damage deposit for post-closing occupancy, where the buyer doesn't want to release it. The buyer says, oh, you damaged this, therefore. But how do they know whether or not that was there or not? So, although this is not a problem really at the closing, it becomes something you have to deal with 30 days later or whatever the time period is, because you've got an upset buyer who believes that the seller damaged something while they were moving out, when in reality, they didn't look under the rug to know that there was already a stain, right? It could be something on a hardwood floor to where it had a little bit of gouge. It could be, you know, right here on the corner. Nominal damage, but all of a sudden, because we're holding $6,000, no, you damaged it and I want my fair share back. As you can tell, I'm happen to be one of those who I'm not in favor of it. As a matter of fact, part of the problem is I'm going to suggest that you don't do it. One primary reason. There is no good legal verbiage that you can follow. I haven't got it, haven't found it, don't feel comfortable with anything that I've seen. It's why it's not even in the clauses. My suggestion, don't do it. Now that's mine. Check with your managers. And I've got agreement here. It's a gray area. And even with purchase agreements that have that, I still question whether or not they're written in a way that there's clarity. If you get one where somebody says simply that there's a $6,000 or a $3,000, whatever the amount is, damage deposit, I would counter it and say, no go. It's too wide open. There's, wow, talk about open for interpretation, and let's let it go to court or let the money sit there forever. So until we get something where there's real clear language to be used for a damage deposit, don't write them up and don't accept them if they come in that way. If it's boilerplate, I'd be okay that you take a look and accept that. But look, you got great brokers and managers to be able to bounce this off of. Talk with them when you actually receive these. In the meantime, man, you see one, run. Last thing I can tell you is clear to close. Clear to close. Don't set a closing date and time until you have the words clear to close. And even then, if an agent tells you you're clear to close, so you're telling me it's all done, it's ready, and by the way, we all know if we're on this, ask anybody that is a hound for clear to close. Agents and mortgage people don't understand clear to close versus go ahead and schedule the closing. We want clear to close. Do that for yourself, for your buyers, your sellers. Do it for their buyers, sellers. Do it for the title company, the mortgage company. Control that. That's what will allow you to have a really good and happy, joyful closing. I'm going to take a look at the chat room here real quick and see if there's anything that I may not have had. Wow. Okay. Don't forget to, yep, village city taxes. Yeah. Thank you. Because that's a key one. Village and city taxes. You got to know where some of those do exist. There's additional taxes. Yeah. Details. Appliance, you could even take pictures to be able to show what's there. At least you got a defense. But the more specific you are, the more detailed you are in regards to what's included, primarily appliances, the further ahead you're going to be. Also, if you do not know if the water softener is rented or owned, be sure to add that in. So look, add it, prepare your buyers that look, until we know if that's rented or owned, I'm going to pretend that it's owned, but if it's rented, obviously they can't leave it. Basically just prepare. Otherwise you're going to end up buying one. Can we put a tractor or something like that in the PA? My guidance would be this: talk to the mortgage person. They're the ones who have the money. They'll control that. But what I would tell you is valuable, unusual personal property. We don't sell tractors. We sell real estate. So if they're going to have financing, we don't do tractors. I'm sorry, no, you don't understand. We're not going to negotiate a tractor as part of this transaction. If we are, we're going to know in advance with the mortgage person that we can put it on. And if they say anything about an addendum, they're saying, no, you can't. Well, that's the same thing. A bill of sale says we sold this to you as part of the personal property. So even a bill of sale that we receive is all of the personal property. So the best thing I can tell you is just don't negotiate unusually valuable personal property as part of a real estate transaction. Let them deal with that on their own. And by the way, I have in 35 years never found verbiage that could work. I just, and believe me, I've tried to think of many different times as to what that could be. But if you put it on the purchase agreement, I would check in advance with the lender to see whether or not they will accept that. From the sellers, commission shortage from it without specifically mentioning commission as a closing cost. If a buyer is able to get concessions from the seller, yep, Can they pay your commission shortage? So you guys look at that in the chat. Basically, it's this. Let's say there's some idiot that's, I'm sorry, some real estate agent that's offering 1%. Okay, not that this happens. What do? We, the real estate agent, can't do anything. But did you sign a contract with the buyer asking them to make sure that you get paid 3% of the purchase price? Let's say the answer to that is yes. Then the buyer is responsible to see that you get paid 3%. Now, again, that's saying that we've completed this correctly. Big smile on my face. Then the buyer could put on their purchase agreement that the seller is to pay 2% of the selling price to be applied toward the buyer's broker's fee. The buyer can do that on their purchase agreement, but we can't do anything to interfere with that. That was their choice in the way that they decided to make sure that you got your full compensation. So that's a short answer to that one. And yes, what I just gave you with that is absolutely a legal way of being able to do it, and also will cover you under the code of ethics. Big thing is we can't go to the other agent and say, hey, would you give me 3%? We can't do that. That's a violation of code of ethics. So what we were just given is that if you have a MISHDA, you may not be able to do that. They don't want a seller's concession or a condition. So you might have to just work with that, which is them not really understanding exactly how that works. Oh, let's see. You got that. Language covered junk removal left behind. I love that one. That doesn't happen. People always leave the property exactly the way it's supposed to. Paragraph 16. Sellers agree to leave property broom clean and free of debris and personal property. It's one of the reasons that we don't like to do post-closing occupancy, because what's our recourse? You don't have anything. You want the house or don't you? So what's probably their only realistic recourse? Small claims court. Okay. I mean, you can try, and people are normally fairly good with it, but when they know that they're going to receive the property and they have any concerns at all, I would make sure I go check it out prior to, or say, hey, seller, I'm coming by. Let's do a final walkthrough before they actually leave. Now, again, what are you going to do if they go, well, no, that crap, I'm just leaving that. Well, no, you got to take care of it. Well, and I'm not gonna. You want the keys or don't you? Small claims court. It's the reason we do a final walkthrough, hopefully less than 24 hours, and preferably right before you go to closing. Now they got recourse. So it's just one of those things that we got to deal with, and we hope that people actually are following along with what the purchase agreement says. So guys, I know it's got to be, it's your fault, you guys. Too many questions, and we brought up good stuff. So we're about 10 minutes overdue, but we'll just call that another wrap to Hot Topic Tuesday. Next week, by the way, no Hot Topic. We will be Wednesday with the Lunch and Learn, and this is going to be a real estate CPA who's going to talk to us about all the things that you need to do to make sure that you're set for your taxes for 2023, or get you as close to what you can to pay less for 2022. So everybody have a great one. See you next week for the Lunch and Learn on your taxes. And the following week will be our last Hot Topic Tuesday. Have a great one, everybody. See you.